we'll stop at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So with that, Paul, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to this presentation. As David said, I'll be talking about true wealth. Now, what does it mean to be wealthy? To some people, it might be an amount of money, say $1 million, right? Maybe it's an income level. If you make $200,000 a year, you're wealthy, or maybe having a big house. But true wealth isn't about how much money or how much stuff you have. It's about freedom. The freedom to live your life on your terms, spend your time how you see fit. Being truly wealthy means not being a slave to a bank, like having a bunch of debt, or a slave to a bad boss or a bad job, and being able to spend time, again, how you see fit. It's being in a position where you don't have to stress about missing a payment. Many people think that if they get the big house, the fancy car, designer clothes, expensive watches, people will think they're wealthy, or they might even convince themselves that they are wealthy. They want to live how they think the rich live, and some even go into debt to buy those luxuries. And the rich do not do that. The rich know that these things are precisely, these luxuries are precisely what keep people from building wealth. And the money would be better spent earning more money for them through investments. They understand that the key is not having to work for money, but rather have money working for them. So fancy stuff might make you look rich, but spending money to keep up with the Joneses is a sure way to keep you broke. And the Joneses, the people that are competing with their neighbors, they're deep in debt trying to show off a lifestyle they think makes them look rich. Plus, your whole life is a lot simpler if you're just grateful for what you have and can avoid being envious about what other people have. And all the money you save by living modestly will allow you to invest and build up a freedom fund to actually be wealthy. So even those who avoid that luxury arms race, like keeping up with the Joneses, they may get caught up in never having enough, like not enough money, right? There are millionaires and billionaires who couldn't spend their money in several lifetimes that aren't satisfied with the number in their bank account. Money is simply a tool and it won't make you happy by itself. It's what you do with it that matters. So again, it's important to be grateful for what you have and not chase money. If you don't know what enough is, you'll never be happy. If your goal is just to accumulate money, you'll never reach the goal because money is numbers and numbers never end. So what does it actually take to be financially free so you can do what you want and focus your time on things that matter to you? Now, the short answer is 25 times your annual expenses. And I'm not going to go deep into this because there's a lot of details. I'm going to spare you the boring stuff. This is the 4% rule. It comes from a study that looked at historical periods of performance in the US stock and bond markets. And they wanted to know what kind of withdrawal rate was needed, basically how much a person could sustainably withdraw every year for the portfolio to last their whole life, their whole retirement. And they concluded it was 4%. So if you have enough money where you could live off 4% a year, the continued investment growth would allow you to cover your expenses theoretically forever. So assuming you have $1 million, right? You could, 4% of that is $40,000. So if you can live on $40,000 a year, then $1 million is enough to last you the rest of your life, no matter how long that is. You can afford not to work anymore. So that's just kind of like something to strive for. That is where you are financially free, depending on how much you need to spend every year, like your basic expenses or whatever. Once you have that much, you can afford to retire. So back to what true wealth is, right? A good way to avoid the jealousy and unhappiness you get by comparing yourself to others is simply not to compare, or to compare yourself to where you were in the past, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. The Instagram effect, you see all these people with their fancy cars and you want to be like them. You just get unhappy when you see that stuff, right? True wealth means not feeling the need to compare. People that are actually wealthy don't really have the need to show off. Have you noticed Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and the current richest man in the world, Elon Musk? They all dress like they shop at Goodwill. And that's because they know they're rich and they have nothing to prove to anyone. There will always be someone with more money or more stuff, someone that's better. you'll never catch up, right? So if you're not grateful for what you have, you'll never be happy. But if you can be happy with a modest life, true wealth is attainable. Plus, all the money you don't spend trying to impress others could be invested and grow to the point where you can buy your freedom. Remember, this is freedom right here, right? When you have, and your freedom is where you have enough money to not have to work if you don't want to, and you have time to pursue your passions or spend time on your mission in life. True wealth is quiet. It's not flashy, and it works in silence until the results speak for themselves. Having time to do the things we enjoy is more valuable than having more stuff, and the benefits last longer. Being able to do what you want tends to be more valuable than living in a big house or driving a fancy car while you're drowning in debt. So it's important to ignore what society expects of us and focus on what's important to you. Ignore the things that are not important to you and focus on what is. It's been said that money doesn't buy you happiness, right? Let me play this video for you. I don't know if the sound is, share sound. All right.
Well, a friend of mine told me, I don't know how I came up with the conversation, but I said, man, money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, money does buy happiness. You just got to give it away.
Wow.
And it's true.
That's,
So
wow. That's very
I know
wise.
we all heard the record before, more money, more problems.
Yeah.
So I call it more money, more solutions. Why? Because you're constantly helping other people's problems.
Oh.
So yeah, money.
A friend of mine told me,
Oops,
I don't know how I
sorry.
came up with the conversation, but I said, man, money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, money does buy happiness. You just got to give.
All right. Sorry about that. Second. So yeah, like Pitbull said, right, of all people, he's actually a famous entrepreneur, or like he's a famous businessman now, and he created like a school in Florida, and he's a philanthropist. So wisdom comes from unconventional sources sometimes. But yeah, money doesn't necessarily buy happiness, but it buys solutions, and it can buy you happiness if you give it away. I believe money isn't good or bad, it's neutral. You know, even the Bible says it's not money that's evil, it's the root. Money isn't the root of evil, it's the love of money, right? That's kind of what the Bible says. So money is a tool, you know, it buys solutions to many of life's problems. And I think it's important for us to focus on accumulating money to the point where our problems are mostly solved in the way that we, you know, in whatever money can solve, right? So, but I also think that it's important to give it away. When we have enough to be comfortable, when we're in a position where we don't have to worry about working to survive, it's time to start helping others. It's time to start helping the world. And one way to do that is by donating. I believe donating is good for your spiritual health and happiness. So I would encourage everyone to donate, to give of themselves. Doesn't necessarily have to be money, could be time, you know, if you can. But very important, only donate your money after you yourself are in a position of safety. Like, you wouldn't try to save a drowning person if you yourself are drowning. You want to get on dry land before extending your hand. You know, like they say when you fly in planes, put your own mask on before helping the person in the seat next to you, because you have to be in a position of safety before you can give, right? So get wealthy, save and invest your money to the point where your basic needs are met by passive income, and then use your fortune to help reduce humanity's suffering and make the world a better place. Switching gears to the investment side, let me start by sharing some statistics that will blow the minds of people that were unaware of the power of compound interest. A 21-year-old that invests $500 a month into the stock market for 7 years and then never saves or invests a penny more will be a millionaire by 65. $27 a day in wasteful spending adds up to $10,000 a year. It's not here on the chart, but $27 a day. If you waste $27 a day, that's $10,000 a year. And if you invested that $10,000 at the market average of 8%, after 30 years, it'll be worth $1.2 million. And after 45 years, it would be worth $4.2 million. And that's because of this, the compounding is exponential. I'm sure everybody knows what compound interest is, right? It's when your interest and the principal continues earning more interest and more interest and more interest. That's what compound interest is. And just to kind of drive the point home, if you want to reach $1 million by 65 and you start at 25 years old, all you have to invest is $286 a month. If you wait 10 years, that amount goes up to 671. And for someone who's 20 years away from retirement, so a 45-year-old would have to invest 1,700 to make that million by 65. So it really shows that it's important to start early, right? Time is your greatest asset. And even small amounts add up to unbelievable sums when allowed to compound over long time frames. Well, Warren Buffett, I'm sure everybody knows Warren Buffett. He's one of the most famous investors in the world. He's worth over $100 billion. He managed to achieve an average return over his life of about 20% a year, which is good, which is higher than like the market average. But there's plenty of others who got higher returns than he did. But the reason the world knows his name and not those other people was because he was able to get those returns consistently for almost 80 years. He started investing when he was 11. And that is why he's a centibillionaire. So again, general advice is to get started investing as early as possible. And now that I've thoroughly discouraged everyone that didn't start investing at 25, let me also say that it's really never too late to start investing. You just have to have a different investment blend. Obviously, younger people are at an advantage because they have lots of time for their money to compound. And even if they're all in stocks and you have these massive crashes along the way, they have time to recover from that, right? But even if you're on the older side, let's say, which I believe most of you, even if you're in your 60s or whatever, you still have decades ahead of you to invest. You might be like, well, what's the point? I might, my money will be worth these many millions when I'm 90 years old, but what if I don't live till 90? Well, I say, what if you do? What if you do? Right? So even if you only have, even if, let's say, God forbid, you get sick and you pass away in 10 years, historically, you have a 94% chance of making money in the stock market if you have 10 years. And if you have 15 years, you have a 100% chance of making money. This is historically. I mean, obviously the future doesn't necessarily, just because it happened in the past doesn't necessarily mean the future will be the same, but you have a high probability of making money if you have, at least 5 years to invest. So young people would do well with high risk, high return assets like stocks. And I'm not talking about single stocks. I'm not talking about picking companies or day trading. I'm talking about buying a diversified portfolio of stocks through something like an index mutual fund, where you can own pieces of the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in America, in one investment. So older people would also do well to own some stocks because of the growth potential, but I wouldn't have, if you're in retirement age or close to it, I wouldn't have all your money in stocks because it's fairly risky, and risky means those, the fluctuations, the big crashes, the going up, and risk and return really go hand in hand. So yeah. And for older people, I would have some stocks, but I would also include more conservative investments into the mix, like bonds, real estate, or precious metals, something where the value is a little more stable, or the payouts are regular. But with stability, you lose return. So the more stable something is, like what's the most stable investment? It's like a savings account. The value doesn't fluctuate. Although you do lose money to, or you do lose value to inflation, right? So speaking of inflation, these are some asset classes that you could potentially add to your portfolio that might keep up with or even surpass inflation during inflationary times. But historically, they don't get as high a return as stocks. So just be aware of that. So like, for example, you have treasury bonds, inflation protected things, I bonds. Oh, I misspelled that. So I bonds, for example, if you've never heard of them, they're kind of inflation protected bonds issued by the Treasury. And currently until October, they're paying 9.6%. So if you want to get kind of a guaranteed return that's relatively high, maybe get some I bonds. But there's also commodities. wood, oil, gold. People will always need that stuff. There's utilities you can invest in because everybody needs electricity and internet. Doesn't matter what the economy is doing. There's value stocks, there's real estate. And finally, there's precious metals like gold and silver. Now, somebody asked me in the chat earlier, they're buying silver coins. Is that a good investment? I would say that if you are in retirement, gold and silver might be a good addition to your portfolio because it doesn't really lose value over time, but it doesn't grow. Warren Buffett calls gold a dead asset because it doesn't really produce anything in the way that a stock does, because stocks are companies and companies produce profits, right? So gold and silver is just like a shiny nugget that retains its value. So you can if you want to, but it's not particularly an investment, right? It just keeps its value. So saving for me, so I came from very humble circumstances, and I never really had like a support system. I didn't really have family I could fall back on. I came back to the US by myself, and I had to make it work. So saving has always been, I've never viewed money as unlimited, and saving has always been important to me. I always prioritized saving. And it worked for me. I got out of debt. I joined the Air Force at 21. I had about, I bought this car back in 2007 that you see in the picture. And I had about $25,000 of debt, car and credit cards combined, and it took me 4 years to pay it off. I tried to save as much as I could. I lived cheaply, any money I got, I always set money aside. And then so it took me 4 years to pay off that debt, and I was 25 at the time. And then at 29, when I got out of the military, so just another 4 years, I saved half my income, and I got out of the military with $150,000. And then 7 years after that, I continued saving and investing. I was a millionaire. So in 11 years, from 0 to $1 million, in 11 years, just by living frugally, by saving as much as I could. When I was in the military, I saved half my income. After I got out, my income dropped drastically, but 2015, I made, I think it was $18,000 the whole year, and I still managed to save like, I don't know, $800. So it really is a matter of prioritization, and as long as I don't drastically increase my lifestyle, which isn't guaranteed now that I'm married, so I'm probably set, as long as I don't drastically increase my lifestyle. I could stop saving now and never invest a penny, and I'd retire a multimillionaire. And if I wanted to, I could probably move somewhere cheap and retire now. No more work needed to sustain me. But it's not really just about me. I want to make an impact on the world with my money, so I keep working and saving part of that income.
He said he's going to come a little bit later. Okay.
But in order to invest, you have to have capital, you have to have seed money. And that money, unless you were born with a trust fund or you have a massive amount of savings, that money is going to have to come from somewhere. And for most people, like myself, it came from my paycheck. And the only way you're going to do that is by living on less than you make and investing the difference. And set aside part of every paycheck, no matter how small the amount is. Prioritize saving part of every paycheck. You know how in the way that many of us set aside the first 10% for God, right? For donating, for whatever, set aside, prioritize setting aside another 10% for yourself, for your future, for your investments. Or it could be 10%, could be 20, could be 50. Like I did 50 for a while, and invest it for your future and the future of your kids and your grandkids. So even assuming, which I don't believe is the case, but even assuming you're at the end of your life and you don't have much time left, you should still invest for the same reason as you should plant a tree. You may not be able to sit in its shade, but future generations will. You invest for your kids, for their kids, for your great grandkids. Invest for the next 7 generations. So your lineage, your descendants have no financial problems, and they can focus on their mission and making the world a better place. So anyway, remember, the point of all this isn't to get the high score, like the high money score, but rather to have the opportunity to free yourself from a mundane life and to be able to focus on the things that really matter to you. Get started as early as possible and save and invest consistently, even if you won't be able to enjoy the fruits of the tree you plant. And with that, I'll conclude and open the floor for questions. Thank you.